This video is sponsored by mpb.com.
So a couple of months ago, I did a review on this channel comparing these two cameras, the Canon 5D Mark I and the Canon 5D Mark IV. And the conclusion was that in good light, you're essentially going to get almost exactly the same image quality out of these two cameras. But as some of you rightfully mentioned in the comments, what I didn't do was test these two cameras in low light. So what we're going to do today, we're going to head out into London and take these two cameras out. And as it gets darker and darker, we're going to keep pushing these cameras and see exactly how they perform in low light. Good ISO performance is the main way in which cameras over the last 10 years have improved. So a camera like this, the 5D Mark IV, I'm expecting is going to produce much cleaner images at high ISO than this camera. So we're going to start this experiment at ISO 800, and I think that's really when this camera, you'd consider the Mark I that you're kind of pushing it in high ISO. There's a bit of noise in the photo, but for my liking, it's not really distracting from the image. If I compare that now with the Canon 5D Mark IV, you can see that they're actually quite similar at this level. Now the 5D Mark IV is slightly cleaner, but I still think at 800, I'm still getting results out of this that I'm pretty happy with. So now the light's dropped to the extent that I've got to put the shutter speed far too slow to handhold. So I've got to put the ISO up. So I'm going to put this up now to ISO 1250, and this is the Mark I. So let's see what we get with this. Also, another thing I should point out is we are using exactly the same lens on these two cameras, the 50mm 1.8 Mark II. I hear you in the comments. I heard what you said in my last video. Yes, I did have a much more expensive lens on the Mark IV, so I listened to you. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the sound of the Canon 5D Mark I when you take a picture? I mean, it sounds so good. It's so satisfying. So if I now compare that with the same photo with the Canon 5D Mark IV, you can see that although the Mark I performs really well, the Mark IV just has a bit of a cleaner image at this ISO, but they're still both usable. Okay, so now the light is really starting to roll off, so I'm having to push this now to 1600. And I think lots of people say about the Mark I that 1600 is the absolute limit you can shoot at. So let's see what results we get out of this. So at ISO 1600, especially in this low light now, you can really start to see where the Mark I starts to get a little bit distractingly noisy. If you compare that to the shot from the Mark IV, the exact same shot, you're going to get a much clearer image at this ISO. Now, that's not to say that the output from the Mark I is unusable, but you might start to think that the noise is getting distracting. I personally still quite like it at 1600. So now it's really, really dark, and I'm going to push the Mark I now to its highest setting. Now this only goes up to ISO 3200, so I'm expecting this to be quite noisy, but let's have a look and see how it performs. Oh, we're getting there. Just to compare, I'm going to use the 5D4 now with exactly the same settings. So yeah, it's like I thought. At ISO 3200, the 5D Mark IV produces a much, much cleaner image. Now, it's not to say that the Mark I is completely unusable, but it's definitely kind of quite distractingly noisy at this level, whereas this one is really starting to take over at this ISO. So if you look at that shot at ISO 3200, this is where we've pushed the Mark I too far. You can see, if you look at the details around the face, it's starting to look really mushy. You're losing any clarity, in the features. And if you're going to look at this on a phone screen, it might be possible. But if you're going to look at this on anything larger, like a computer monitor or print it out, it's not really good enough. Okay, so now the 5D Mark IV is going to take over. I'm going to select ISO 6400 on this. So it should be able to perform okay, but we'll see how we get on. At this stage, we've left the Mark I behind. Like there's nothing more we can do with the Mark I at this light level. So let's see how this does. Now, I think it's worth bearing in mind that it's not just about noise. We're not just looking at noise here. If you can push a camera to a higher ISO, so you can shoot in darker conditions, that also means that you have many more options available for creativity. So you can use a faster shutter speed in darker conditions. You can close down the aperture a bit and get more of the picture, more of the scene in focus than you otherwise would with a camera that you can't push in the dark. So I think these are important things to consider. If you're doing any professional work, where you have to shoot in low light conditions, but you need to have more of a control over the creative elements of the photo, then you're going to need a camera like the Mark IV, which is really a beast in low light. So to my eye, 6400 is still producing really, really clean results with the 5D Mark IV, definitely still usable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this to its extreme, which is ISO 32000. And this is the very limit of this camera, so we're going to be able to see in the dark, but I'm not sure the picture's going to be usable, so let's have a look.
Pablo strong! Mo!
Now, it's not that the 5D Mark I is completely unusable in low light. You just kind of have to work a little bit harder and make a few more compromises with other settings to get the result that you want. But if you're going to be doing professional photography work, paid work, but also if you want to get into fine art photography, fashion photography, things like that, you're going to really want to go with the 5D Mark IV. The low light performance of this, along with other things like the higher pixel count, but also the video functions as well, is making this camera, so much more versatile than the Mark I. So if you're in the market for a Canon camera that's going to produce amazing results in all conditions, especially in low light, you can't go wrong with the 5D Mark IV. Leave your comments below, let me know your thoughts. Check out the links below for great deals on this camera and this camera from mpb.com, and you can also pick up the 50mm 1.8, which is a personal favourite of mine, over there too. I'll leave the link below, and I will see you next time.